The 2024 NFL regular season is in the books. We are on to the postseason, and today I'm going to put all 14 playoff teams into a tier list like the one you see in front of you. Welcome in, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Now, before we begin, I remind you to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and if you want more content like this, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to be notified of when I post content in the future. I did a couple of videos like this back in August, one for in the preseason, one for each conference, where I put all 16 teams in each conference into a tier list with 4 different tiers. I'm going to do essentially the same thing today, except with all 14 playoff teams, and there are going to be 6 tiers in this list instead of 4. Also, I will note, I will get the all of my predictions for the playoff bracket out on Thursday. I'm recording this video Tuesday night. I'll post what I predict will be the playoff bracket on Thursday, and then every week after that, I will predict each round. So technically, me predicting the entire bracket will be my wild card round predictions. I will grade those as such, and then I'll do the divisional round, and then the conference championship games, then, of course, the Super Bowl. With all that out of the way, let's begin. We'll begin with Tier 6 on the bottom of the screen. Dead on arrival, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Houston Texans. I genuinely do not know what either of these teams are good at right now. Now, you probably hear me say that. You think, oh, the Steelers have a pretty good defense. Do they? I don't know if they have a good defense. What have they been for the last month? 27 points against the Eagles, 27 points against the Ravens, because 7 of the 34 came off the pick 6, 29 against Kansas City, 19 against Cincinnati, which looks good, but they moved the ball up and down the field on them all day. Cincinnati had 5 scoring drives. The reason they only had 19 points was because they were 1 of 5 in the red zone. Steelers' defense has not been good. They've had one, I'd say, good game in their last 6, and that was against a Jameis Winston-led Browns team. Because a couple weeks before that, Burrow carved them up then as well. And Russell Wilson's magic has completely worn off. He had a good run, looked pretty good against the Jets in that Sunday night game. I thought he played well against the Commanders. But he has been dreadful the last 4 weeks. And then the Houston Texans. We all thought this would be a bona fide Super Bowl contender before the year. And not all of their issues were ones we could have seen coming before the season. I don't think anyone thought Tank Dell would break his leg, or I think his knee. I think it was a knee injury for a second consecutive year. I don't think anyone thought Stephon Diggs would tear his ACL. But they're not good enough on either line. Their offensive line is utter dog shit. They have been all year. And their defensive line, they can rush the passer, stop the run, not so much. The Texans also can't beat good teams. This season, against playoff teams, they are 1-5. Their one win was a 3-point win at home against Josh Allen's Bills. They needed a 59-yarder at the gun to win it, and it was on a day that Josh Allen had literally the worst game of his career. They got blown out by Minnesota. Lost to Green Bay. Embarrassed at home against Baltimore. Lost to Kansas City. Lost a home game to Detroit when Jared Goff gave them the ball 5 times. They had a 16-point lead at halftime. The Steelers are matched up with the Baltimore Ravens, who are a freight train. And I know the Steelers have had success against the Ravens, but I think the Ravens have overcome their Steelers demons in that Week 16 game. And the Houston Texans play the LA Chargers, who are coached by Jim Harbaugh and are very stout on both lines. The Chargers should push them around. Brandon Staley is not the Chargers coach anymore. The Chargers should not lose that game. Both of these teams, no chance to get out of round 1. Tier 5, house money, Washington and Denver. Both of these teams could lose their respective wildcard games 35-0, and it would still be one hell of a season for both of them. Both of these teams have outstanding rookie quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels for the Commanders is going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, but Bo Nix for the Broncos has been excellent too. Both teams have very solid offensive lines. Both teams are well coached. Denver has an excellent defense. I think they're both very long shots to get out of round one. Washington has a road game in Tampa Bay. I give them a long shot to win that. Denver has a road game in Buffalo. I give them an even longer shot to win that. But regardless of how these playoffs go, whether they really surprise me or they perform exactly how I expect them to, it's a great season. Tier 4, divisional round ceiling. These teams are all very good. Nobody can deny that. And it's completely on the board that all of these teams win their respective round one games. I obviously think some of these teams are more likely to win their round one games than others. I think the Chargers are super well coached by Jim Harbaugh, have a really good quarterback, and are stout on both lines with an excellent overall defense. Should beat the Texans, who are floundering. The Vikings, even though I think they might lose to the Rams, they are favored to win that game. And the Packers, even though they're certainly underdogs against the Eagles, they're well coached with a good quarterback, a really good running back, a good offensive line, and an underrated defense. However, none of these teams can make the conference championship game. The Packers' path to the NFC championship game would be the Eagles first, and then the Lions. The Packers are a combined 0-3 against those two teams in the regular season, and they also got swept by Minnesota. They have a bit of a problem beating the best teams in their conference. Although they could be dangerous for a game, they are not going to win consecutive playoff games against those teams. The LA Chargers, if they win their round one matchup, which I think they will, their round two matchup will be a game at Kansas City or potentially at Buffalo or at Baltimore if one of those two teams were to fail in round one and a lower seed than the Chargers were to go to the divisional round. The Chargers, as well coached as they are and as stout as they are on both lines, I think their vertical passing game is way too limited to beat a Kansas City or a Buffalo or a Baltimore. I think they've also had issues beating teams over 500. They got swept by Kansas City, lost to Baltimore. They got blown out by Tampa. And Minnesota, if they were to beat the Rams, their round two game would either be at Detroit or at Philly. They are not winning at Detroit. If you watched that game 272 between the Vikings and the Lions in Detroit, you would know that the Vikings are not going to Detroit and winning. And at Philadelphia, the Vikings are 0-4 against the Eagles in the playoffs in their franchise history, and the Eagles remain an awful matchup for the Vikings. Tier 3, demonstrably dangerous, 2 NFC teams. Now, when people think about the top contenders of the NFC, these two teams don't typically come to mind. Typically, Minnesota or Detroit or Philadelphia come to mind. These are seeds 3 and 4 in the NFC. And while I don't think they can win 3 consecutive playoff games to get to the Super Bowl, there are things about these teams that you just can't overlook. For the Rams, I know they have a super inconsistent offense, but they still have the best quarterback in the conference, one of the best coaches in the NFL, and Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay are the only coach-quarterback combo that is still together, other than Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, that have won a Super Bowl. And I mentioned that the Rams have an inconsistent offense. They do have an excellent defense. And then Tampa Bay. They are inconsistent and up and down. However, Baker Mayfield has been excellent this year. And they can claim that they beat both Detroit in Detroit. They were one of 2 teams to do that this season. The other is the Buffalo Bills. We'll get to them in a minute. And they also are the only team that can say, we played the Philadelphia Eagles and beat them to a pulp earlier this season. If you think about the Eagles, they have 3 losses this season. One was the home game against the Falcons, which Sirianni just blew by himself. They lost that game by a point. And then the other was the game at Washington a few weeks ago, when the Eagles were up double digits. Jalen Hurts goes out of the game with an injury, and because of that, they can't move the ball. and the Commanders are able to come back and win. I don't think either of these teams can win 3 consecutive playoff games, but they are dangerous for the higher seeded teams. Tier 2, serious contenders. Although I am not going to predict that any of these teams make the Super Bowl, if they did, I would not be surprised at all. All of these teams are excellent. The Ravens, their quarterback is going to be one of 2 guys this year that receive first place MVP votes. They have a nearly 2,000-yard rusher in Derrick Henry. Their head coach, John Harbaugh, although he hasn't had a lot of playoff success in a while, has won a Super Bowl in the past. Their defense, the first 10 weeks of the year, looked really rough, but since they went to Pittsburgh, their defense has been one of the best in the NFL. And then the Lions and the Bills are similar in that they can score 30 on anyone. I'm pretty sure the Lions and the Bills are the first and second highest scoring offenses in the NFL, if of course you exclude for the Bills Week 18 when they were resting all of their starters. But the concern for both the Bills and the Lions is that their defense, although they get a lot of takeaways, they give up a lot of yards. And if they don't get any takeaways, their defenses become serious liabilities. And it's not like the Ravens don't have any weaknesses either. The Ravens have had games this year where they've been a little bit undisciplined. I love Lamar Jackson, but historically, he has not been very good in the postseason. Actually, he's been very poor. So these are excellent teams. Wouldn't be surprised at all if they made the Super Bowl. However, they do have flaws that make me a little bit skeptical. And then lastly, Tier 1, Super Bowl, the Chiefs and the Eagles. I think that these are going to be your Super Bowl teams for Super Bowl 59. I think we're going to get a rematch of Super Bowl 57 2 years ago. The Kansas City Chiefs need no introduction. They have the best head coach in the NFL, the best quarterback in the NFL, the best defensive coordinator in the NFL, the best defensive player in the NFL. When he's on his game, even though he is old, when he's on his game, the most dangerous pass-catching weapon in the NFL in Travis Kelce. There's nothing not to like about this Chiefs team. Earlier this year, they looked a little bit shaky. They were winning close games that you would have liked to see them win by a greater margin. But they got Marquise Brown back recently. They're getting their cornerback, Jalen Watson, back. Isaiah Pacheco came back from injury. It seems like they figured out the left tackle position, sliding Joe Thuney over there and having Caliendo, I think that's what his name is, play left guard, has really stabilized that. And the Eagles. So one thing to be concerned with about the Eagles is the health of their quarterback, Jalen Hurts. He suffered a concussion a few weeks ago, and he's still in concussion protocol. I don't know when he's going to come out of concussion protocol, and although I think it's on the board that they have to start a backup quarterback against the Packers in the wild card round, this roster is good enough for them to go to the Super Bowl, even if Jalen Hurts has to miss a game. Their offensive line is excellent. They have the Offensive Player of the Year, Saquon Barkley, excellent receivers, excellent tight ends, and in my opinion, the best defense in the NFL. They're going to have home field advantage until the NFC Championship game, if that, against the Detroit Lions. And if they play the Lions in Detroit at Ford Field, that's a controlled environment in a dome. And with those dynamic weapons on the outside, if they make it that far, I have to think Jalen Hurts will be back healthy. I think they'll have the weapons to take advantage of the weaknesses in the Lions secondary. And those are my NFL playoff team tiers for 2024 through 25. I will get the video out where I predict the entire playoff bracket on Thursday. This video will be uploaded on Wednesday, so that will be tomorrow. I remind you to leave a like if you enjoyed this video and to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And if you want to be notified of future uploads, please click the bell icon. You can choose whatever notification system you like. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will see you all again real soon.